The scream shattered the sultry evening air, raw and piercing, cutting through the hum of crickets and the distant drone of a lawnmower. Elise Carter froze on the sidewalk, her sandals skidding against the pavement of Willow Creek's neatly trimmed cul-de-sac. Her husband, Nathan, nearly tripped over their border collie, Milo, who yanked at his leash, ears pricked toward the sound. Another cry followed, wet, desperate, nothing like the playful shrieks that usually echoed from the community pool. Elise's stomach lurched. Her eyes locked on the pool's chain-link fence, glinting under the amber glow of streetlights. Something was terribly wrong. It was supposed to be a quiet walk, a chance to stretch their legs after dinner in their postcard-perfect suburban enclave. Willow Creek was all manicured lawns, friendly waves, and kids on scooters until dusk. The pool was the neighborhood's heart, alive with summer chatter and the splash of cannonballs. But tonight, the air felt thick, oppressive, as if the world held its breath. Elise grabbed Nathan's arm, her voice sharp. "That's from the pool. Hurry." They broke into a run, Milo barking wildly, his leash dragging behind. As they reached the gate, Elise's heart plummeted. The pool deck was unnaturally still, save for the frantic thrashing in the deep end, a figure fighting the water, arms slapping uselessly, head bobbing under. A child's floatie drifted in the shallows, abandoned. Elise scanned the scene. A lifeguard, barely 20, stood frozen on her elevated chair, whistle dangling, face ghost white. Two others in red swim trunks lingered by the edge, arms crossed, eyes darting nervously. Why weren't they MOVYing? Lifeguards were trained to dive in, to act. Yet they stood there, paralyzed, as if waiting for a signal that wasn't coming. Nathan didn't hesitate. "Someone's drowning," he shouted, vaulting the fence, his sneakers pounding the concrete. Elise fumbled for her phone, fingers shaking as she dialed 911, but a gruff voice interrupted. "You can't use that." A man in a polo shirt stocky, with a clipboard strode from the pool office, his tone dripping with authority. Elise recognized him vaguely from HOA meetings, always lurking near the board president. She ignored him, pressing the phone to her ear, but his words stung. "Emergencies go through us first." 911, "What's your emergency?" The dispatcher crackled. "Willow Creek Community Pool." Elise stammered, watching Nathan dive into the deep end, his strokes cutting through the water toward the struggling figure. "Someone's drowning, Zen, help now." Her voice trembled as the VY Tim's movement slowed, their cries fading to gasps. The young lifeguard finally snapped into action, grabbing a flotation ring and DVYing in. The older one, his face etched with weariness, followed reluctantly, as if wrestling with some unseen rule. Elise hung up, her pulse racing. She'd heard rumors about the HOA's incident control, Policino 911 calls without board approval, supposedly to keep insurance rates low and the neighborhood's image pristine. It had sounded like gossip, something to scoff at over wine. But now, seeing the lifeguard's hesitation, the clipboard man's glare, it felt real and deadly. Her chest tightened with dread and anger. Who would gamble with a life like that? The next moments blurred Nathan and the lifeguards dragging the VY Tim to the deck, a woman in her late 30s, limp and pale. Elise recognized her as Sarah Mitchell, a soft-spoken neighbor from Maple Drive who always smiled at Milo. Paramedics arrived, sirens wailing, and the growing crowd parted. Elise clutched Milo's leash, her hands trembling as medics performed CPR, their voices sharp and urgent. Sarah's lips were blue, her chest still. Nathan stood, dripping nearby, his face slack with horror, catching his breath. The ambulance sped off, but the news came fast. Sarah didn't make it. She died at the hospital. Her heart stopped too long. Elise and Nathan walked home in silence, Milo padding quietly beside them. The neighborhood's charm its tidy mailboxes, its glowing porches fell hollow, stained by what they'd witnessed. Over a tense dinner, their forks scraped in quiet fury, the unspoken question heavy. Could Sarah have lived if help had come sooner? Elise couldn't sleep. She lay awake, haunted by Sarah's final gasps, the lifeguard's frozen stares. By dawn, Her shock had sharpened into purpose. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a betrayal, and she needed answers. She scoured the HOA's online portal, sifting through newsletters about bake sales and sprinkler rules. In the minutes of a board meeting from 6 months back, she found it. Item 8. Incident mitigation. The board discussed protocols to reduce external reporting of non-critical incidents to preserve Willow Creek's reputation and financial stability. Staff must consult HOA leadership before emergency calls unless unavoidable. The words chilled her. Unavoidable was a trap, vague enough to paralyze anyone. She showed Nathan, whose jaw clenched. "They're covering their asses while people die," he said, voice low with disgust. "For what? Cheaper insurance? A shinier brochure?" Elise nodded, her resolve hardening. They couldn't let this slide. The neighborhood was already simmering. A group chat buzzed with outrage. They told Lifeguards to wait for approval. "It's about property values, not us." Sarah deserved better. Elise and Nathan joined a packed meeting at the clubhouse the next night, the air thick with tension. Families, retirees, even the Lifeguards filled the room, their faces grim. At the front stood Helen Ramsey, the HOA president, a poised woman with a forced smile and a stack of notes. She offered condolences for Sarah's family, her voice polished but brittle, like she was reading a script. The crowd wasn't ha-vying it. A dad named Marcus stood, his voice shaking. "What's this about number 911 calls without your say-so? We've heard the rumors now, we want the truth." Murmurs swelled. Helen's smile wavered, her fingers gripping her notes. "There's been a misinterpretation," she said. "Our policy was for minor issues, lost wallets, small scrapes, not emergencies like this. We'd never delay real help." "Real help," Nathan cut in, standing, his tone sharp. "Sarah drowned while your Lifeguard stood there, scared to act because of your rules. That's not a misinterpretation, that's a death sentence." The room erupted, voices overlapping in anger. A Lifeguard, a wiry kid named Jake, spoke up, his voice shaky. "They told us 911 calls could tank the safety record. We'd get disciplined if we didn't check with the board first." Helen's face paled, but she didn't refute him. The truth hung heavy, undeniable. Elise left the meeting furious. Sarah's blue lips burned into her mind. She dug deeper, talking to longtime residents for clarity. She cited Ruth, a widow who'd lived in Willow Creek since its first homes were built. Over coffee in Ruth's cozy kitchen, Elise learned how the HOA had morphed from neighborly volunteers to a machine obsessed with optics. "It started with the developers," Ruth said, her voice tinged with regret. "They wanted to expand new condos, a fancier clubhouse. Every 911 call was a mark against their funding. The board drank the Kool-Aid, thinking it'd make us richer, safer. Instead, it killed Sarah." Elise's anger flared. It wasn't just bad judgment, it was greed, cloaked in community pride. The neighborhood's grief fueled action. Lawn signs appeared, lives before profits. A petition for a board recall spread like wildfire. Elise and Nathan canvassed doors, collecting signatures. Some hesitated, wary of chaos, but most signed eagerly, their trust in the HOA broken. The board pushed back with a glossy mailer, touting their steady leadership and calling Sarah's death an unforeseeable tragedy. Elise crumpled it, her hands shaking. Their nerve only steeled her. A local reporter caught the story, and Elise spoke to her by the now-shuttered pool, recounting that awful night. The article was brutal. HOA rule stalls rescue, neighbor dies. Social media lit up with the justice for Sarah, amplifying the outrage. As the recall election neared, tension spiked. Elise noticed petition signs vanishing, then learned a maintenance worker in board orders was removing them. Nathan confronted him, calm but firm, and the signs returned, now tripled in defiance. Then came the lawsuit. Sarah's family sued the HOA for wrongful death, claiming the policy delayed critical help. It was a gut punch, proof the board's actions had consequences. Helen Ramsey held a press conference, lawyers at her side, insisting the policy was misunderstood and that the HOA acted in good faith. Elise watched, her pulse racing as Jake, the lifeguard, stood in the crowd, shaking his head. He knew the lie, and so did she. The recall election was electric. Residents lined up at the clubhouse, their faces fierce with purpose. Elise helped monitor the polls, watching for trouble. At midnight, the results dropped. Helen and the board were ousted by a landslide. Cheers echoed, mixed with tears. It was a VY Tory, but a heavy one. Sarah was still gone. In the weeks after, Willow Creek began to mend. An interim board, led by neighbors like Marcus and Ruth, scrapped the No. 9/11 rule, replacing it with call 911 for any emergency, no exceptions. New safety plans emerged: defibrillators, better lifeguard training, ties with the fire department. Elise volunteered to gather resident input, amazed at how it felt to be heard. A memorial garden bloomed near the pool, its plaque simple. For Sarah Mitchell, our neighbor always. On a chilly October night, a VY Gill lit the garden, candles glowing against the dark. Sarah's husband, Tom, and their daughter, Lily, stood quietly, their grief softened by support. Lily spoke, her voice soft but clear. Mom loved this pool, this place. Thank you for fighting for her. Elise's eyes stung, her heart full. The community had shifted not just rules, but its core. Winter cloaked Willow Creek, the pool sealed under a tarp. Yet the neighborhood felt alive, neighbors now allies, bonded by loss and resolve. Elise walked with Nathan and Milo, the streets no longer just pretty, but a promise of VY vigilance, of care. Sarah's death was a scar, but it had woken them to a truth. A single call, one act of courage, could save everything. And they'd never forget it. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.